Welcome to Edie Extra, edie.net's home for all of our exclusive special audio features. As more voices, businesses and initiatives join the conversation on environmental sustainability and tackling the climate crisis, Edie Extra cuts through the noise. We'll be asking the big questions about the hot topics, profiling seasoned leaders, and getting out and about, taking you to the heart of the action with on-site recordings from site visits and events across the world. Welcome to the place to find in-depth conversations with sustainability leaders about sustainability leadership. Welcome to Edie Extra.
Welcome back to ED Extra, the audio channel for sustainability professionals where we hear from sustainability professionals. I'm ED's editor, Matt Mace, and for this special audio feature, we're discussing all things purpose. Edelman's annual trust barometer has revealed that 68% of people believe businesses are purposely misleading the public, and purpose is at risk of becoming another corporate buzzword that confuses stakeholders and detracts from the tangible work that some organisations are delivering right now. Indeed, figures from BSI reveal that 2/3 of UK consumers say that they would abandon firms that purpose wash. To that end, BSI has worked with a range of stakeholders to develop a purpose standard that seeks to define what purpose-driven organisations, or a PDO, is. This is called PAS 808 and was first published in early 2022. This PAS sets out what it means to be a PDO in practice by outlining key worldviews, values, principles, behaviours, and dividing key terminology. It aims to give confidence to those who are generally seeking to become a purpose-driven organisation or who are already purpose-driven to shout more clearly and consistency about their struggles and their successes and to help others to see what is possible. Now, the standard has picked up international interest and the community of key stakeholders behind its formulation are working to turn it into an ISO standard that is globally recognised. For this ED Extra feature, we talk all things purpose and business with some of the architects of this movement. And I'm delighted to say that joining me for this conversation, we have Andy Brown, who is the Group Chief Sustainability Officer at Anglian Water, Gemma Piggott, who's the UK Head of Corporate Sustainability at JLL, and Sarah Gillard, who is the CEO of Blueprint for a Better Business. So we've got some real experts in the virtual room, so to speak, for this conversation. Thank you all three of you so much for joining me today. Andy, I suppose it's best to start with you because you were kind of the person I reached out to kind of get this conversation started. But when we look at what's happened to date, how did this journey start for you when you kind of decided that this was something that actually was worth getting involved in?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so this for us stems back to Anglian Water changing our Articles of Association. So we decided as a company to put environmental and social prosperity alongside a fair return to investors into our articles back in 2019. And when we did that, we said, as well as changing the duties on directors, we also wanted to have a set of responsible business principles that we could adhere to and report against publicly. And when we started having a look at that, we really couldn't find something that we thought was fit for purpose, excuse the pun. So we approached the British Standards Institute and said, look, is there a standard out there that we're missing? Is there something that that's already on the market that we could have a look at? They did a bit of research and said, no, they couldn't find anything. And so they said to us, well, we could create one, we can work together to develop one. And then we started to have a look at, who else might be interested in this, because we didn't want this to be an Anglian Water thing. We didn't want it to be a water sector initiative. We wanted this to be something that any business or any organisation could get involved in. And so there's a kind of process that BSI then goes through. We looked for some other sponsors to help kind of fund the creation of it. And then there's an independent process of setting up a steering group with businesses, but academics and thought leaders and NGOs who then work on drafting and developing a standard over the period of about 18 months to 2 years before publication. So that's how I got involved in it. and then drew both Gemma and Sarah kind of formally into the process as well.
Yeah, I'd love to get a kind of a bit of understanding about so Gemma, maybe we'll come to you next, as to how you got involved. Did you know Andy before this? What would kind of drew your attention to this kind of area of purpose, I suppose?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, so Andy and I were on a couple of kind of industry networks and forums together, so knew each other reasonably well, although it's fair to say we know each other a lot better now that we've been doing this work together. And for us, the opportunity to be involved in the standard came at a really good time, because we had a strong approach to sustainability, a strong approach to DE&I, and we're aware and we're starting to think about actually what does our purpose approach look like, and we're aware of this broader conversation happening within business, and felt quite strongly that there was a big opportunity for us to do more work on this. And so when Andy kind of put it to us that there was this new initiative that he was spearheading, it felt like absolutely the right time for us to get involved, really. And I think the key draw, as Andy said, was around that collaboration with others to arrive at something that was going to really serve industry and business and organisations really well. And the calibre and the quality of people involved was something that was really attractive to us.
That's great to hear. And speaking of the kind of calibre of people involved as well, we've obviously got Sarah on the call, CEO of Blueprint for Better Business. So Sarah, again, that same question to you: how did you kind of get kind of enrolled into this? And you're like, again, were you aware of Gemma and Andy personally before this, or is this your kind of the first project you've worked on with them?
Well, to be honest, I felt like I snuck in, Matt, and got away with it. So at the time, actually, I was working at the John Lewis Partnership, and it was around sort of 2019, 2020, and I was leading the work on how to re-articulate the purpose of that organisation. Having spent 25 years odd in retail, I knew that organisation was trying to do something very different, and that was showing up in lots of different ways: how it measured success, how it thought about strategy, how it shaped its culture. And I thought it had something to do with purpose, and I was reading a lot of books and TED Talks and articles and all sorts, but I was grasping for something that I didn't quite know what it was, and it still felt a bit hard to articulate. And I was doing my best and sort of feeling like I was making it up in the John Lewis Partnership. And a former colleague of mine, Bennett Northcott, was involved in the BSI and said, well, actually, we were about to start this piece of work on defining a standard for it. Would you like to get involved? So, yeah, I didn't know Gemma and Andy before this project. I know them very well now. And so started as a John Lewis Partnership representative, but Blueprint for Better Business, which is the charity that I now work for, was also involved. So when I moved jobs, I snuck in again and just stayed in the group. And Blueprint briefly has been a charity going for about 10 years, which explicitly exists to create better business, better society through better business. So it was a very natural thing for the charity to be involved, because this is an area that we've been working on for some time, or certainly my predecessor has been working on for some time, and is one of the organisations that's been kicking around with business in this space for quite a while. So was doing the work and could see that a standard would really bring some clarity and accountability and transparency to what we were doing.
Yeah, you mentioned the clarity piece, and I think that's where, I mean, as a journalist that's written about purpose a fair bit, that's where we kind of see the major kind of stumbling blocks around purpose. It's kind of has historically lacked that definition. So I suppose opening this kind of conversation up to the group, and feel free to come on this as you see fit. Has this collective vision come from the fact that without a kind of more standardised, you mentioned kind of clear and accountable approach of what exactly purpose driven looks like, it would just be kind of open to, I suppose, not deliberate misuse, but kind of that confusion, and it wouldn't really tie the business community together? Is that the kind of real vision around this? Is that kind of standardized approach that a business can adopt and really start to move away from that kind of business as usual approach that we know isn't probably, and again, using Andy's pun, fit for purpose for the future, right?
If I jump in first, because I guess I guess it all stemmed from some original conversations we were having, and for me, it's a standard that isn't like a typical standard at all. So this is a principles-based standard that looks at the principles and the behaviours of an organisation that is aligning with being properly purpose-driven, which is putting the well-being of people and the planet as the kind of the ultimate anchor. So it is supposed to define what being truly purpose-led looks like and try and demonstrate what the behaviours that organisation would be displaying. I think, it was important for me that there's a lot of talk about purpose, but there's not always the kind of doing, in line with your stated purpose. So this is really to help define that. But what it also recognises is that I think you can be purpose driven, but your performance on certain elements of your purpose may not be perfect. So being purpose driven and being perfect are not the same thing. So
I think, every company has a purpose, right? And for a lot of time when I was, again, in the early days, sort of trying to find out what this word meant, people would say, the purpose of this company is to make as much money as possible, or the purpose of this company is to innovate for customers, or the purpose of this company is to be number one in, the market, or whatever it was. And these are all valid, strategically coherent purposes. And I think what the standard was really doing was saying, well, what we mean by a purpose-driven organisation is one that has the long-term well-being of all people and planet as its ultimate objective. So you can have other reasons to exist as a company, but when we say purpose-driven organisation, this is the definition of it. And I think that really helped, because there was just an awful lot of, like you say, that word purpose being bandied around without a common understanding of what it meant. And so it was sort of being co-opted by everybody because it was a trendy thing at the time. Sort of peak purpose was in the 2020 to 2023, I reckon. And so every company had one, but there was a vast spectrum on to what extent that was actually serving the long-term well-being of all people and planet, or whether it was a very self-interested, this is our purpose, so we can be clear about it, and we're purpose-led. It's not quite the same thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think from the position of being somebody in a company, and it often is just one person, it's not one person for sustainability, but it can be, or for us it can be for purpose, and trying to build some energy and momentum around that. When you start trying to do that and start looking at what exists out there that can help you with that, there are so many good people working in the purpose space and so many good things which are produced, but it can also be a little bit not overwhelming as such, but you're just not really clear where to kind of start. And so the word that Andy used around anchoring, I think, is really helpful and really important. And certainly when I started to inquire about this in more detail, I used really innovative methods like searching the internet, and you get confronted with loads of different things. So being able to have a single comprehensive standard that just helps you anchor what does it actually mean to be a purpose-led business? What should that look like? What are the things that we need to be thinking about as we approach that, and as we start to think about what that means for us, is just incredibly helpful, I think. And this confusion point is something that certainly I chat to a lot of others about in other companies, of kind of where do you start, where do you go, what can help you pick apart what this means.
Because we've seen a lot of that confusion. I think businesses and define exactly what their purpose is, and it doesn't necessarily help the kind of needs of society and the planet. Long term, we're aware of that but it can pivot, very quickly, as we saw with the pandemic, for example. In terms of the work that you guys have done on really building out this standard, what's been the kind of biggest, I suppose, game changer to date? Because we see those challenges, and obviously this is designed to overcome them. So what's the kind of thing you're most proud about this project to date?
I guess, well, first I'm proud that we even created something and got it out there and published, because there's when you're developing something, and I've learned far too much about the standards world over the last 4 or 5 years, there's no guarantee that you're going to get through the end of the process and have something that is a viable proposition. So, as a group, BSI brought an independent steering group together with a fantastic kind of technical author, Dr. Victoria Hirth, to develop a draft, and you get then to a certain point where you put it out into the public domain, and we get a consultation running, and then we get all of that feedback back from people. And I think we had comments from 70 different organisations on the draft. Mm. Then you go through a process of saying, well, do we need to take account of that comment? Will that help create a better product at the end of the day, or have they misunderstood something or whatever? And then you put out your PAS. It's a publicly available specification, this standard, to the outside world. And then the kind of traditional approach is that you let it live or die. So if it is something of value, people will use it, and they will download it, and they will implement it within their organisation, and then there's a review done at the end of 2 years. I guess what I was proud about was the fact that almost everybody around the table said, we're not going to let that happen. This is too important. So we will establish a steering group that's going to kind of, I guess, parent this this child that we've created. I also chair a LinkedIn group for practitioners who are thinking about using it, want to understand more, are using it, and have got thoughts about how it could be better. And we've got 150 plus organisations kind of on that and kind of feeding questions in. So I'm proud about the fact that it's being thought about, talked about, used, and it's also being used across a spectrum of organisations. So there's big businesses like ours using it, but there's academic establishments using it. There are SMEs using it. So and the fact that it's now being developed or being used as a base document to develop an international standard after just 2 years of publication is really quite a rare occurrence. So yeah, there must be something in it.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and I think as Andy mentioned, Victoria's extraordinarily brilliant job of bringing together people who are all in a very similar field, but all have slightly nuanced understandings of what it is that we were all trying to articulate. And the sort of tyranny of small differences could have meant that this would have dragged out for 10 years and been a 50,000 page document where, every single word was argued over. And it wasn't like that at all. I think everyone in the group really sensed that there was a moment of opportunity to create something that was going to be actually useful and practical that was needed now, and that therefore getting to a good enough position and articulation that we could all collectively agree to that was going to be helpful was absolutely the priority. And I think that was very well managed by everybody involved. And as Andy said, then the kind of, it wasn't just a thank goodness that's published, now we can walk away and allow it to be in the world. I think the enthusiasm with which it has been parented and others are getting involved really indicates that this is needed, this is useful, and that it's being actively used already in many organisations, and that globally there is an opportunity to really share what we have learned in this process and make sure that the ISO is going to be as used and as enthusiastically received by others.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that, and I think the danger with these things is that the risk is that they are done, completed, and then sit on a shelf somewhere. And that just doesn't feel like that with this process, because it's so much part of a kind of open conversation with multiple people working in this space. And we've seen people kind of interpret the PAS for use with their partners in a really helpful, evolutionary way, I think, which just adds to the broader conversation that is happening in the purpose sector. And yeah, as both Andy and Sarah have said, large credit to Victoria, who has just been driving this so strongly and so beautifully.
Gemma, just sticking with you, because we've spoken on that kind of purpose, essentially switching away from that. It's not about just making, profits for your shareholders, and it's kind of intrinsically linked back now towards society or the planet, which funnels down into that kind of ESG department for a lot of businesses, right? And it seems that there's the reason this is so important is because there has been kind of in-house sustainability professionals like yourself, like Andy, even Sarah, kind of their ex-role, feeding into this. What kind of unique perspective has having kind of sustainability practitioners on board for this had, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me this is purpose and sustainability are kind of natural bedfellows, or purpose is a natural evolution from sustainability. Certainly when I talk to other people who are in sustainability roles, they're also kind of looking and thinking about purpose as that next evolution of it. So I think having sustainability people as part of the development of it means that it's grounded in all of the kind of conversations that have needed to have happened in business over the last 10, 15, 20 years around thinking about the impacts of business and what we do to manage those. But what this does is manage to add a new dimension into the conversation, I think, which is not around how do we reduce our impact, but it's more intentionally around what is the role that we want to play in the world, and what is our role, and what's the enduring value that we seek to create. So it's inevitable, and I think helpful to me, that sustainability professionals are in the conversation, because they can take all of the work that has been done over recent times and really start to kind of build that out and take that to a next level that fully embraces the purpose-led approach. I guess the other thing that I would mention is that I think this also poses some interesting questions back to sustainability professionals around how do you square a purpose-led approach plus a sustainability strategy plus possibly a social impact strategy? How do all of those things fit together, complement one another, as you take businesses on a kind of evolution and an ever greater sophistication around understanding their role in the world?
I think that's a really great question, actually, Gemma. And I think what's really useful for me is both the input that we've been having post the publication of PAS 808 from lots of different organisations, whether those are consultants picking it up and using it as a framework, whether those are in-house sustainability professionals using it, is the build on the current standard. And so I lead the UK BSI committee that's feeding into the international kind of conversion of it. So PAS 808 was put forward as the working document. But what we've seen in that conversation is being able to draw on the experience and the input that everybody has had to start to really evolve the structure of what ISO 37011 will look like. And I think it is going to be a much more accessible and easy to use standard on purpose when that comes out in another 18 months time. So, and we'll have the opportunity to share that kind of both here in the UK, but also with businesses and organisations who are interested in being purpose-led right across the world. So I think you'll see a kind of quite a marked evolution of that, Gemma, which will help to kind of show how those elements of the different parts of sustainability really fit into being purposeful and, all hook up against that kind of ultimate anchor of long-term well-being for all people and planet.
And I think the interesting thing for people in my type of position is how do you partner with people in your business to make sense of all of that, and for it to not seem as though sustainability or purpose professionals are coming with all of these different things, and actually Sarah and Blueprint are super at helping us understand to not pile more stuff on top of the iceberg. But how do you do that in a way that takes everybody in a business with you? And I think that is, that's something that we're all kind of grappling with all the time.
It's interesting, actually, because of course sustainability professionals are key people in this work, but actually what we've found, so we have a community of practice of practitioners who are trying to transform their organisations to becoming purpose-led, and they are from sustainability, yes, but also from strategy, from HR, from leadership and development, from finance, from procurement, from marketing, because it is a transformation across the entire business. And I think, again, what the standard does is help you begin to understand that, because no one person has got the expertise required across all of that to transform a business. And so I think a lot has rested on sustainability's shoulders for many years. And I think what this does is say, look, it cannot be one function. It is across the entire organisation. It starts with a change in mindset about the worldviews of this organisation and what success looks like, and that's got implications for strategy and governance and measurement and how we allocate resources and all sorts. It's also got implications for how we are and our behaviours and our culture, and that's the sort of wise and ethical methods that the standard talks about. So it is a complete shift across the entire organisation, and I think where previously sustainability departments have been thinking, "Good grief, how am I going to, drag this organisation from one place to another?" This shares the responsibility and the opportunity across all of the functions of an organisation. I think that's a very helpful thing. So you're not just bolting it on to a machine that exists, thinking about itself in a very different way. You've got this sort of standard that you're trying to achieve as a bolt on. It really asks for a very different engagement.
I think that's really key, because it's almost the antidote to ESG in a way, in that this allows you to have some really deep and meaningful conversations with everyone across the business. And to Gemma's point, it doesn't have to all be done at a single point in time. The design of PAS 808 was having that in mind and saying, well, all organisations, whatever point in their journey on sustainability and purpose, should be able to pick it up and use it. If you're setting up a new company and you want to start with purpose in mind, then it's a framework that you can use to create the kind of internal organisational structure and approach. If you're if you're an organisation where you think you are being purpose driven, or you want to move, to formally become purpose driven, again, you can use that framework. And if you think you are truly purpose driven, and I'm not sure there are really very many organisations in the world that really are there yet, you can use it to dig in and really evaluate and have, those really important questions to challenge yourself. And, I've certainly used that within our organisation to sit with the board and say, for an example, they're looking at 168 performance metrics every month. Do you understand how that is driving you towards your purpose aspirations of delivering environmental and social prosperity? And after an interesting conversation, we said no. So we developed a new dashboard with some of the same metrics, but new metrics in there, which gave us, the best attempt at trying to say, well, okay, that's our purpose dashboard. From that, we might understand whether we are driving forward or not.
It seems like a really important time for this to kind of come about, and I know the work's still ongoing, but because we are, sustainability, ESG, CSR, the evolution of it is quite clear, but it seems we've always suffered from the same kind of incremental step forward, a couple step back when an external factor comes in, right? And I think we're in this kind of landscape now where kind of early 2025 we had the Edelman barometer come out for this year that said that more than 2/3 of people believe that businesses are purposely misleading the public. At the same time, globally, we're seeing some cases, and I think it's clear to say that is some cases and not all cases, and those some cases are picking up perhaps more coverage than others of businesses stepping back from their kind of commitments in favour for this kind of like short-term profitability mindset again. A fair few businesses in the US are rolling back or outright abandoning their kind of sustainability goals. Even the kind of B Corp movement is kind of having to redefine what it really means, with some companies leaving out there. And I think for anyone that's just kind of maybe glancing across the kind of national news aspect of this could see this as ESG and purpose kind of almost kind of floundering in the water a bit. But it's clear from this conversation it's definitely not. But I suppose more broadly, how does a sustainability professional absorb all this externality and kind of build that business case that actually this is still very much the direction of travel?
Well, you're right. The context is challenging in many ways at the moment. And I think, and it's why involving particularly the strategy function at this point is so important. Because, forget about the sort of financial case, short-term, medium, long-term. I think all of us believe that becoming purpose-led is actually a way that you can create sustainable long-term financial returns. So there is no trade-off between profit and purpose. And I think that has been proved actually in the academic data time and time again. But there is still a perception out there that there is a balance to be struck, or more of one equals less of the other. And I just think that's not true. It hasn't been true for a while. But if you look to the even sort of short to medium term future, it is unlikely that business will be operating in a very stable environment, environmentally, socially, politically. There is turbulence and there is disruption. And it seems to us that the best way for organisations to be able to adapt to all of that disruption is by having trusted relationships with all of those stakeholders and the context in which you operate in. And in order to create trusted relationships, you need to be really clear about in what ways are you positively benefiting the context around you, because that's how you build trust. And it needs to be true. It can't just be a slogan that you've written on the wall and then do nothing about it. So it actually has to be true, and your employees will call you out if it isn't. And that's a useful thing because they're the ones on the front line who are actually seeing it. So organisations who are serious about long-term success, I think, are holding on to this idea that you've got to be really clear how it is that you're benefiting people and planet, and make sure that you're trying to do more of that and less of the stuff that's damaging. And that is going to create long-term resilience and returns to investors and good and meaningful jobs and, products and services that we actually are useful and work. All of these things which business is brilliant at doing. So it's sort of still common sense that if you want to be a long-term business, you are in service of the people in society that you serve, and you're really focusing on positive impact, and by doing so you will make profit. So there's an awful lot of heat and noise around at the moment, but I think the fundamentals are still true and will become ever more true as we move into a future that looks probably quite a lot different to the recent past, and that will challenge every business, I think.
So I agree with everything that Sarah said, and I think businesses and individuals are having an impact on things all the time, every day, every second of the day. And actually, I think the helpful thing about purpose is it's not asking you to do something new and different and start from scratch over here. It's actually doing something additive to what's already happening. So it's asking you to think about value, but think about value in all the different types of ways in which you create it. And certainly my experience has been that when we've done sessions with our teams, that's actually been there's been a real sense of kind of flourishing and eye-opening around that, rather than it feeling like it's in any way kind of restrictive or inhibiting activity. It's actually been quite the opposite. We totally are in a difficult and changing and there is an environment and externality that's happening which is very full at the moment, but certainly the work that we've done is that it's opening people up to new and different ideas, which is a really helpful thing. And it's, as I say, it's a lens that's applied rather than it being something new and separate that needs to be taken care of.
And just to add, I mean, the way I think about it is, your purpose is your sat nav, which is looking at your long-term direction and destination. There are going to be kind of hiccups and obstacles on the way, and you need to make sure that the vehicle that you are in is able to get to that destination. But you've got to be focused on where that long-term destination is. If you only focused on your vehicle's dashboard and you're not looking ahead, you'll end up in a ditch or off a cliff or whatever. So yeah, we've coming from a natural resources business, there is no argument around how the climate is changing, and what we need to do in order to survive as a species, facing what we're facing. So yeah, those can be distractions. So let's focus in on what the long-term destination is.
And yeah, as someone whose sat nav took them right into roadworks this morning that had just cropped up, I suppose that's a fit analogy, because the direction travel's there, but there will ultimately be some more kind of challenges as this kind of transition shapes up around us, which brings me nicely onto my final question, which will maybe get some nice succinct answers, because I don't want to keep you any longer, because I can appreciate how busy you are, but what kind of happens next now? And I suppose not just in the kind of formalities aspect of it, but that kind of blue sky thinking, once this is the ISO is out there, what do you want to see happen? Andy, maybe we'll come to you for just a kind of quick summary of the next steps in terms of the development of this, and then what's your end goal in this?
Yeah, so next steps, well, as I said, we've got a LinkedIn practitioners group. So anybody who wants to learn a bit more about PAS 828, and then potentially feed into the development of the ISO, find me on LinkedIn and come and take part in that group. It would be brilliant. We're getting to the kind of final stages of doing the first draft. And then when that goes through the official committee, there will be a public consultation out. So anyone can kind of feed into it at that point. And then, in about just under 18 months' time, hopefully it will get published. And I think, what's been really brilliant for me is seeing the real interest across the globe. So, I think there are 172 countries signed up to the International Standards Organization. There were no dissenting voices in saying we should create this standard. And we have around 33 country representatives who are regularly taking part, and they are trying to create the best possible standard, which has been brilliant. There's no suggestion of watering down or making it, less impactful. So that has been a hugely, restorative and uplifting experience.
And Gemma, what's your kind of ultimate aim for this? That kind of blue sky thinking. What would you like to see happen in this space?
I think in the very short term, I would just encourage more businesses and organisations to use it. So I think the real value and the beauty of this is when people get involved and add to the conversation. So we definitely need more. And I would say, given the comprehensive nature of it, and we haven't really talked much in this discussion around people and meaning at work and all of those types of areas as well, the standard does a good job at incorporating that too. So I would say we definitely need more people to use it, and there will be something in there wherever you are on your purpose journey. There'll be something in there that helps you make sense of what you're trying to do. So maybe if Andy's taken the long term, I can take the very short term. More people engage with the standard, and particularly part of the conversation as it progresses to ISO.
Great stuff, thank you, Gemma. And Sarah, we'll grab some last words from you then. What's your kind of vision for this?
Well, I'll take the 50,000 foot version then, if you've both covered the short and long term. I think for the UK, what the PAS did was create a catalyst for loads of brilliant work that was happening anyway to come together and coalesce around something and gain momentum and amplification and make connections. And I think the ISO will do the same. There is extraordinary work happening all over the place across accounting and law and regulation and measurement and culture and AI and a whole lot of other things. And I think the standards can create that anchoring point that Andy talked about right at the beginning for that work to hook onto and create momentum and amplification for us to hopefully transition to a wellbeing economy far faster than otherwise we would have done. So there you go. That's the optimistic note to end on that.
It's always good to finish on an optimistic note. That's great. Gemma, Sarah, Andy, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great to kind of get that kind of peek under the lid, so to speak, as to how this all works. And I think it's just really positive to hear that there's some really passionate people involved in a standard that, as you've all reiterated, can generally make a big difference in a time where that kind of trajectory is very much needed, and the plotting, of course, to get there. So we're, Edie, very excited to see how this shapes up. We'll be following it quite closely, not co-parented like you guys are, but maybe we can do, godfather and mother duties every so often or so. But thank you all so much for your time today. It's been great to speak to you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks ever so much, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.